Have you ever wondered if there's a simple method to finally plan that bucket list hike you keep putting off? After years of successfully planning hiking adventures, from trekking with 10 mates to backpacking Scandinavia with my wife and 4 kids, I've created a streamlined process anyone can use. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I tackle planning 2 dream hikes you specifically asked for: Queensland's Thorsborne Trail and Norway's remote wilderness DNT Massive. Quickly, safely, and stress-free. And before we kick things off, both the rough outlines and plans for the trips in this video are available to download in the link in the description below, so go there if you want to check them out. The Thorsborne Trail, Queensland, Australia. Now, we had a lot of suggestions when I put a post out on the community wall on YouTube asking for trips you'd like me to plan on a live video. And in the end, I really can only fit 2 into one video. Even then, it might be a bit long. But if you like the video, make sure you like down below, leave a comment, and we can do more of these in the future. But first up in this video, we've got the Thorsborne Trail on Hinchinbrook Island. And this is one that's been on my bucket list forever. So thanks to @TedNeck for the suggestion here. So let's have a look at it. Imagine hiking through remote, rugged terrain straight out of Jurassic Park. Sounds epic. But planning it, well, that's where a lot of people can get stuck. Because here's the thing, only 40 people can start this hike daily at a time. And those permits, once they get released, they vanish fast, especially during peak season. You're competing with school holidays, perfect weather windows, and everyone chasing the same dream. Now, if I were planning this hike, here's exactly how I'd approach it. Step by step, using the same system I've used to plan other complex trips in high demand areas. First, step 1, I'd start with permits. Before I go doing anything else, before I book flights, ferries, anything, I'd head straight to the Queensland Parks website. And I just found this out by Googling. I just Googled, how do I walk the Hinchinbrook Island Thorsborne Trail? And it's taken me straight to this Queensland Parks and Wildlife Department of Environment website thingy. And it's got on there the release dates, when the permits are going to be released, and the dates, if I want to walk the track, what dates I want to walk them, what relevant dates the permits are released upon. So basically they've shifted to a hiking season model, meaning permits now drop on specific release days, which are announced in advance on this website. So I'd be marking these dates in my calendar, setting alarms, being ready to book the moment they go live. And I'd probably even look at the release dates at some of the dates prior to the ones I'm wanting to get on, just to see how it all works and how easy it is to get on there as well. Step 2 is to understand your window. Now, since this trail is in far north Queensland here in Australia, you've got 2 seasons basically. You've got the dry season, which is winter, and then you've got the wet season, which is summer. So the dry season, which is sort of April to October, is the go. It's when I'd be wanting to go, but that's exactly why it books out fast. If I wanted decent weather and better odds at a permit, I'd probably be targeting the shoulder months of that season, like May or September, something like that. I think this is my theory, and when I Google it a bit and have a look around online, that is a sort of suggestion as well. And if I didn't land the permit, that's fine. For trips like this, ones like this, which you're banking on getting a permit, I always plan at least 12 to 18 months ahead, sometimes probably longer. This is a walk I actually want to do, and this is just on my bucket list of hikes. So when I do get serious about it, I've got all this planning done, I can come back and recheck it, but it's something that's going to sit in the back of my mind, and I'll hopefully get a permit at some stage. And just doing some initial planning like this well in advance, sometimes years in advance, it gives me time to reapply, watch release dates, or pivot to another trip while keeping this one in my sights and again in the back of my mind. So this is the kind of system I use for every dream hike I want to do. I start with the non-negotiables like permits, layer in the seasonality, then I build the rest of the trip around that anchor. Now, we'll go deeper into the ferry, flights and gear shortly, but this is where the sort of foundation gets set for the planning. Travel logistics, ferries, flights and fixing planning chaos. So say that we've now done a bit of more research and we've landed the permit, or you're circling around the next release window. But here's what some people can sort of underestimate. One missed connection, one vague date, and suddenly you're scrambling, blowing hundreds on last-minute rebookings or losing days of your hard-earned time off. So to avoid that, here's how I'd plan every moving piece of the trip before I lock anything in at all. Before I hit the book button, before I pay anything, here's what I do. First, the ferry schedules. Plan backwards. So no ferry equals no hike here, because you need to get dropped to the island and picked up. So that's pretty straightforward. The Thorsborne Trail requires a ferry from the mainland to Hinchinbrook Island And I found the operators that do this through the Queensland Parks website where I found all the booking information. And while I can't book in those ferries yet, because obviously the permit for the walk dictates what dates I'm going to go on the ferry, I'd still start logging everything here now and just keeping the details of it so I can refresh my memory easier later on. So to do that, I use an app called Notion for this. That's my sort of base camp for all my planning, for everything. I even plan all these YouTubes, videos, that type of thing in my Notion app. But having said that, you can just use a spreadsheet as well. A simple spreadsheet is what I've used in the past as well, and that works very well also. And I put stuff in here like operators, rough timetables, the pricing, notes on sort of availability, everything I can research goes in, so it's all there at one reference point. Then as I start to lock stuff in, once I get that permit and I get a slot, then I've already got sort of the logistics and the planning half done. When it's time to book, I just plug in the confirmation details, the final times, the prices, and it all goes into that same database, all in the one spot. Then what I do is, and I bring in another app called TripIt, which is my backup brain whenever I'm actually on the move traveling. Any booking I make, it scans my inbox, my email, and builds a master itinerary I can access later on, as well as print it out and leave with my family if I need to. Just automatically creates that itinerary off all the bookings that I've made around those dates. It is pretty cool. And also, don't forget, I have dropped a link in the description down below to today's sort of planning doc that I'm creating here. So whether you use Notion or you just want to grab a PDF, you can grab a copy in the link below. And there'll be one for both the Thorsborne Trail and the Norwegian hike as well. That way you're not starting from scratch if these are hikes you want to do. So next up, we're going to look at flights and start mapping sort of the whole trip, the entire route, if you will. So since I'm coming from Tasmania, I'd scout out Cairns or Townsville as my arrival hubs from Tassie, and that likely means I'd be flying from Launceston to Brisbane, then onwards from there. So I'd use Expedia to check who flies there, just so I can get an idea of all the airlines flying there, when they're flying, that type of thing, and rough prices. Then I prefer to go direct to the airline's website. I use Virgin Australia here, and I use some hypothetical dates initially, although I'd put in around the same date that I'd be planning on going. If it's next year or in 2 years, I'd put that same sort of date in to get an idea of flight routes and prices, obviously for now. And that's just giving me a rough idea of the planning. It's obviously could change, but it just gives me a rough idea now as I'm doing this initial very sort of brief planning thing that I do a long time out in advance. And would the flights get expensive? Well, possibly. And I guess that's the trade-off with permit-based hikes. But I'd pad a couple of buffer days before and after the walk so I can adjust without panic and actually enjoy the area. And then also you've got your accommodation as well. And I'd look for 1 to 2 nights pre-hike near where the ferry goes from, somewhere fairly close by, or look if there's shuttles taking people to the ferry terminal. And I'm not just after comfort here, I'm also looking to get organised, sort my gear, and hopefully leave a bag or two behind with the hotel. And I'd probably try for some type of hotel here as opposed to an Airbnb on this occasion, as I'd most likely have some stuff I want to store so I don't need to carry it out on the trail with me. So I would be asking and ringing in advance to find out if any hotels could do that type of thing for me. And a little pre-hike prep here saves a ton of stress and organisation later on. I may also be making this part of a much bigger trip, so this may just feature as a small part of my overall planning. So when I look at flights now for, say, this coming September, it's coming in at around 500 Australian dollars return per traveller from Launceston to Cairns, which is pretty good. So I'll just plug that in my spreadsheet, so it just gives me an idea for when I actually go ahead and lock all this in later on. Planning the walk itself, route, gear and strategy. So with some very rough logistics in place, permits, ferries, flights, I know the sort of deal with them now. Here's how I'd actually plan out the hike itself. And to be honest, getting to this point is already half the fun. At this point, I've gone deep into the research. I've been reading trip reports, blogs, forums, and official track notes to piece together the most reliable sort of game plan for this walk. And that kind of rabbit hole planning, I get down those rabbit holes. It's just addictive, and it's what makes the trip feel real before your boots even hit the track. Now, onto how I'd actually walk it, what I would actually do. This isn't a route that I would want to rush. While it could be done in, 3 days maybe, I'd probably give it 5 days based on my research. Not for difficulty, but to slow things down and just soak it all in. I've had to wait time to get a permit. I want to get out there and just soak it in once I'm out there. And, as I read about this walk more and more as I do my research, you look at somewhere like Zoe Falls on this route in particular, that looks like a spot I'd want to spend some time to really enjoy and have a swim. So I'd plan it out like this. I'd hike north to south, starting at Ramsay Bay and finishing at George Point. And here's roughly how I'd break it up. So I'd hike to Nina Bay on day 1. Short, scenic, and just a good intro day after getting the ferry, of course. And then day 2, I'd walk to Little Ramsey Bay, and this section gets rockier and a bit more exposed, I think, from what I read. Then we get to day 3, and I'd stay put on that day. I'd use this as a rest day and an exploration day. I'd walk to Zoe Falls to swim and recharge a bit and just chill out, read my book, just explore the local area. Then day 4, well, I'd push on to Mulligan Falls. It looks pretty lush, pretty remote, and just gives me some great sort of finish line energy for the last day to put me close to the finish. Then finally, day 5, well, we've got a fairly short walk to George Point and aim for a midday or even later ferry out. So probably get up early, cruisy walk down to there, and then head out later in the day. Now, obviously, I might change this as I get closer to the walk. Once I've booked it, I'll have, look even closer at it. I've just got to book that permit for my departure day. Once I've locked that in, I'd play around a bit with the itinerary and see what takes my fancy, but this is looking pretty good as an initial plan. This pacing keeps things relaxed, it avoids rushing past the best bits, and it gives me margin for weather or creek crossings that could slow me down. Gear strategy, comfort first in the tropics. So my setup in regards to gear here would be pretty comfort focused and not ultralight. I'd take a full tent with a mesh inner, and that gives me the option to sleep with the fly off the tent on hot nights and still be sandfly proof and bug proof. I'd definitely be taking a quilt over a sleeping bag. I mean, I use a quilt all the time anyway here. It's a little bit lighter, a bit more breathable, and in the humidity I could just open it up and use it like a quilt, I guess. But some people from my reading also report cooler nights on the track, so the quilt will still give me some comfort as well. For this trip, I'd probably go with my Zen Bivy ultralight bed so that I had maximum comfort, which is what I'm after. If my wife was coming with me, then we'd definitely take the Zen Bivy light bed double, which we've been testing out, and it's just awesome. So that would just be comfort central with that thing. For water, well, I'd take my Sawyer Squeeze filter and pair it with a couple of the Canuck, do you say Canuck or Canuck? Canuck bladders, plus backup water purification tablets in case streams are dry or sketchy. Just carry them regardless anyway. I'd probably take cooked dinners every night. I'd probably just take freeze-dried meals for this trip just for ease of transport, but I'd look for some premium sort of options as well, I guess. And so I'm doing a comfort trip. I want some good food as well, so I'd look into that closer to the date. Then I'd mostly take my standard hiking kit, but I'd also make room for a few sort of region-specific items. I might take a head net, maybe, and some insect repellent, of course, for sandflies and that type of thing. Take some of that old bushman stuff that I use. I'd take what I normally take in terms of electrolytes for dehydration and combat heat, and I normally take them regardless anyway. And I would keep a very crocodile-aware mindset near the beaches and creeks up there, because apparently they're around. I would do a lot more research into that before I went as well, just to see what the deal is with crocodiles in that area. Now, most campsites along the track appear to have toilets and access to water, though it varies from season to season potentially. I'd aim to camp near reliable creeks, avoid exposed beaches if a storm's coming in, skip anything that feels too cramped or mosquito-ridden, and doing this over 5 days gives me a little bit of flexibility to move on to another campsite if I get somewhere and I don't like it, or to stop somewhere early as well. So that's sort of built into this itinerary a little bit as well. Now, on the walk, the Zoe Bay area looks like the crown jewel, and if possible I'd try and spend 2 nights there, like I said, so I can hike up and to the falls and just enjoy the view to the Zoe Falls, the swimming, the space, and the final morning is a short walk to George Point, so I'd aim for a late ferry out to give myself a no-rush finish, and maybe just one last swim before heading back, if you can actually swim there. Again, I'd need to check that. So that is a brief overview of how I'd plan an Australian hike in an area that I haven't been to, I haven't hiked in. That whole process obviously takes many weeks to finalise, many hours of research, but this gives you a rough idea of how I go about it. Now, next, I'll show you how I tackle something completely different, and this is Norway's Alpine hut-to-hut network, and why the logistics of that trip are a whole different beast. DNT Massive, Norway. Planning a 350 kilometre month-long epic. So the DNT Massive, a 350 kilometre hut-to-hut traverse through 4 of Norway's most iconic mountain regions. This one came from @Mozart. Thanks, Mozart. And honestly, it's exactly the kind of trip I dream about. Now, if you followed the channel for a while, you'll know I've got a soft spot for Norway. I travelled extensively through Norway a couple of years ago and did a few shorter hikes there, and I've just been obsessed ever since. Glacial valleys, alpine meadows, pristine lakes, and trails that are remote but just really nice to walk. It's wild country, but Norway, they just make it feel just nice. It's a nice place to be. And the DNT Massive, well, it's next level. It links together 4 specific sort of regions of mountains: Breheimen, Jotunheimen, Skarvheimen, and Hardangervidda. I think I'm pronouncing them kind of right, hopefully. And it's a full cross-section of the country's mountain heartland. And honestly, the more I read about this walk, the more and more I want to get there as soon as possible. So subscribe to the channel to see when and well, that's happening. That is happening at some point. So subscribe, as I have my eyes set on that sooner than later, and we'll do a video on that when we do. But first, let's get back to this planning so we can plan the actual trip first. So step 1, understand the trail. Well, the route runs here from a place called Sota Sita. Again, sorry about the pronunciation, my Norwegian followers. There's a few of you, and just leave in the comments how to pronounce it. Yep, so it starts in a place called Sota Sita, and it goes to a place called Hauka Liseta, and you can break it into stages or do it in one continuous push. Me personally, I'd be aiming for the full 18-day journey, but I'd probably spread it out over 3 to 4 weeks, I think. And here's a rough idea of what I'd be walking into. So you've got stage 1, which is Breheimen. We've got rugged, remote, glacier-influenced terrain, big views, and fewer crowds. Then you've got stage 2, which is Jotunheimen, Norway's highest peaks, alpine passes, and some of the most dramatic scenery in the country, is what I'm reading. Then you've got stage 3, Skarvheimen. You've got rolling highlands, grassland, ridges, and open valleys, and it feels more expansive and easier walking. Then you've got stage 4, which is Hardangervidda, which is vast plateau country. Wind exposed, but unforgettable. Long days, broad skies, big weather. And to me, it feels like each stage would be like entering a different world. I'd aim to average around 20 kilometres a day, sometimes more, with built-in rest days, probably between each stage, just in the little village or whatever's nearby, to sort of recharge, reset, and just take it in, just enjoy the journey. Now, there's huts the whole way, and some of the huts are staffed with full meals. Others are self-serviced with stocked supplies, which sounds really awesome. Either way, you can hike light, but it's still proper alpine country, so the gear has to match the terrain as well. Step 2, pick the timing. Well, I'd probably go for late July. I've been in Norway at that time of year before. You've got long days, but sun basically doesn't set, relatively stable weather, and good snowmelt on the passes. So I'm thinking it might be the sweet spot for big mountain hiking up there in Norway, I think. But I'll obviously do more research closer to the date. Step 3, flights, transfers, luggage strategy. So getting there, I'd fly into Oslo and then maybe transfer to the town of Lillehammer, depending on the cheapest connection to the track. But it looks like Lillehammer's pretty close. From Australia, I'd normally fly Singapore Airlines, as I can pretty much get from Tasmania to Copenhagen with a stop in Melbourne and a stop in Singapore before flying onto Oslo, and I can do that pretty quickly normally. So it's a long trip, but I'd give myself at least a couple of days of relaxation in Oslo before moving on, but I can do that whole flight route in about 28 hours, which is pretty good from Australia. Now, Sota Sita, I'm butchering that, aren't I? The starting point, Sota Sita, is looking a little remote. I'd piece together train and bus connections, or hopefully get a Norwegian friend that we have there to drop us off, but I'd look into that a bit more closely as well. Coming from Tasmania, I'll have more luggage than I want to carry on the track. Luckily, I've got friends in Norway. We could hopefully leave a bag with them. If I didn't, I'd probably fall back onto one of 2 options. I'd look into luggage storage in Oslo, or with friends, I reckon. There are some pretty solid commercial looking services for long-term sort of gear holding that I found a couple of websites for, again in the planning document below. Otherwise, I would leave it with other friends in Europe, say in Finland with my friends there. If I was flying through Helsinki, or I'd go and visit them before and after or something, I'd look into that a bit closer to the time. But having a base bag I can leave behind is pretty crucial, because it means I don't need to carry a laptop, all this extra clothing or non-trail gear for 4 weeks across the mountains. I'd probably also spend time either side of this hike in Europe, because it's such a long way to get there. I'd be crazy not to, I'd normally go for 2 months and spend some time either side before and after the hike. Next step is booking huts and planning flexibility. I'd probably look into booking the first and maybe even the final few huts, especially the staffed ones, but I would just leave that and just sort of research it maybe a year out. I'm not going to be doing this the next 6 months. I'd leave it a bit, and the rest I would leave pretty flexible depending on weather, fatigue, and how each day plays out. I'd store every HUD option, phone number, and notes in Notion. So I've got quick access to all the backup plans on the track. I'd normally have that downloaded on my phone as well in a PDF. My massive planning doc, link below, includes all the region research I've done so far. So download it, either the link to Notion or the PDF, just grab it and go from there. Next, we'd have my gear setup for a month in the mountains. Even with huts each night, I wouldn't go extreme ultralight. I'm not that guy. I'd still take a quilt, probably a liner, just a very light one for added comfort and hut flexibility. A very lightweight shelter. I'm just thinking a tarp shelter of some sort to give me peace of mind in the alpine conditions if I needed an emergency shelter. It'd be very light, but it would give me shelter. I'd have my full layered clothing system, including a solid rain shell, thermal base, probably something Norwegian made, maybe a bit of Bringy mesh base layers. I mean, we're rocking that right now. They'd be coming with me for sure. I'm not sure what I'd take in terms of footwear, but I'd probably go for trail shoes along with my trekking poles for this trip, I think. Then in terms of navigation, I'd have my GPS on my phone, I'd have my physical maps, I'd get maps of the whole region, and I'd have a written plan as well. I'd have GPX routes saved into my watch as well for every single day, as well as on my phone, and I'd be carrying backup battery power obviously as well. In terms of meals, well, I'd be relying on hut food wherever it's available. We'll be doing more research into that as well. It looks like food you can get pretty much the whole way, but I'd bring a few freeze-dried options as well for remote huts or weather delays, as well as snacks for each section as well. I like to take my own snacks. It's my type of thing, so I'd be taking them as well. And in terms of the trail flow and the why behind this whole trip, well, this hike isn't about going fast. It's about depth. It's about immersing yourself in the wild terrain day after day. The hut system makes it logistically possible, but what excites me is the idea of a full month with purpose, just moving through ancient landscapes, unplugged from normal life. And I did a month-long trip once before, and it's just, I've always wanted to do another one. This looks perfect. And I'm in huts this time. I'm not in a tent. And while the DNT offers a massive pass, badges, and a Hall of Fame entry if you finish the whole trip, I'm definitely not doing it for that. For me, it's more about just completing a journey, not just a trail, but an experience that lasts way beyond the final day of the trip. Planning this is half the joy. I've already gone deep into this. Trip reports, blogs, hut logistics, maps, and it's just been addictive. And that rabbit hole research, it's just part of the fun. I love it for planning trips, and it's probably why I end up planning a lot of trips for my mates as well. Just makes the hike feel real before you've even left home, and you just can't help but think about it. I'm thinking about this walk all the time now. I'm really quite excited about it. And like I said, if you're curious, a link in the description has all my working, and you'll find all my notes, all the links and stuff that I've been reading in those notes down below. Now, if this is the kind of behind the scenes planning, it's something you want more of, then let me know in the comments below. I've got a long list of bucket list hikes I'd love to map out, and you guys left a heap of other great ones as well. But before you dive into your own trip, then go and watch this video next. It's packed with the hard-earned lessons I wish I'd known sooner. Seriously, these 51 tips here, they'll save you time, money, and pain on your next hike.